Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily. This is a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder, chief academic officer here at Newsella, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So this summer has been a strange moment for school districts. If you follow education news at all, you've probably seen a bunch of headlines like New York City schools pause software purchases, Fairfax County bans AI for elementary students, Texas district restricts generative AI. It might sound like schools are finally getting serious about AI, right? Like somebody rang a bell and suddenly everybody woke up. But here's what you might notice if you start reading these stories a little more closely. All three of these districts, New York City, Fairfax County in Virginia, and Katy ISD in Texas, are basically announcing policies about something they can't actually see. And the mismatch between the policy and the reality, I think, is the real story here. It's what every educator needs to understand about what's actually happening in your school right now. So let me walk you through what each district discovered when they tried to figure out what was happening with AI in their schools. Let's start with New York City. In early July, Chancellor Kamar Samuel sent out an email asking principals to pause software purchases until the DOE finalized new AI guidance. It seems straightforward, but at a city council hearing, when officials tried to answer basic questions, they ran into a wall. How many schools are actually using AI products? Which products? And the answer was, we don't know. The state comptroller had flagged this as a significant problem. Schools make purchases at the building level. Nobody's tracking it centrally. So here's the DOE announcing a purchasing freeze on something they don't really have visibility into. Now, if you look at Fairfax County, just outside DC, the school board wanted to get serious. They banned generative AI for elementary students. They're banning tablets and laptops for pre-K and kindergarten entirely. They're implementing a whitelist firewall, only pre-approved sites and apps. And they directed the superintendent to create a comprehensive inventory of every AI tool on district-issued devices by January 14th of 2027. Now, that's aggressive. They're trying to get control. But in board meetings, members started revealing the problem. Board Chair Robin Lady said, I could live with banning AI through grade 8, but I don't know what that means because if a kid is writing a paper in Word, how do you turn off spell check? How do you turn off grammar check? In other words, we can't even define what we're banning. And then this exchange, a board member named Melanie Marin wanted Canva and Adobe treated the same way as ChatGPT because they're all, quote, cognitive offloading. But those are tools teachers actually use. So you're potentially banning most productivity software. And another board member asked, if this is a plan to just put the laptops under the chair or in the back of the room, why does it have to be a plan? Couldn't we just do this? Fairfax discovered something else too. Lady said, as FCPS has cracked down on what happens on school Chromebooks, more students have started bringing personal devices, presumably to get around restrictions. There's no firewalls. There's no way to control it. So the moment you restrict school devices, you lose visibility entirely. Now let's turn to Katy ISD in Texas. They announced a phased approach. Elementary students can't use generative AI. 7th graders can only use it when a teacher directs them. 8th graders need permission. This all seems reasonable. But an anonymous principal told the reporter, we have already built budgets, planned interventions, and made decisions about programs for next year. Changing direction in July makes summer planning significantly more complicated and creates uncertainty about whether schools will have access to the tools they plan to use. In other words, we didn't know this was coming, and we have no idea if your policy actually changes anything. Here's what all three of these stories have in common. Districts are making policy about something they can't see. And when they try to solve that problem, they hit a fork in the road. There are basically two paths they can follow. Path one is surveillance. You want visibility? Install monitoring software, track what's happening on devices, create inventories, implement whitelists. That's the Fairfax answer. It solves the blindness problem, but it also means that teachers are working under observation. It means someone's watching the data, and it creates a different problem than the one you were trying to solve. Path two is trust. You set principles like AI should support thinking, not replace it, and then you trust teachers to make judgment calls. That preserves the autonomy and it keeps oversight out of the classroom, but it also means you can't enforce policy. You can't prove you're doing what you promised parents. Your guidance is essentially unverifiable. And here's the thing, neither Katy nor New York City is actually saying this out loud. They're landing on path two by default. They announce policies knowing they don't have full visibility into what's happening. Samuels is asking for a purchasing pause while the city actually figures out what its guidance should be. And Katy is phasing in restrictions and hoping it works. So let's be clear about what this means if you're a teacher or a school leader right now. If your district is going the surveillance route, if they install monitoring software, implementing whitelists, doing inventories, your autonomy in the classroom is going to shrink. Someone is going to be watching what you're doing. Your device use is going to be observable, and you're not being treated as a professional making judgment calls. You're being treated as someone who needs to be monitored. If your district goes the trust route, that is, if they set principles and step back, you'll keep your autonomy, but now you're making high-stakes decisions alone. Your principal can't back you because they don't actually know what's happening. Your district can't enforce consistency, and when a parent comes to you with a concern about AI, you're defending a policy you barely understand because your leadership didn't explain it clearly. Either way, you're losing something. And the conversation that should be public about what kind of oversight is acceptable and why isn't surfacing in the reporting or the board meetings. The questions aren't being asked out loud. Do you want more visibility into what students are doing? Or do you want more autonomy to make decisions? If we're going to monitor, what are we monitoring for? Or conversely, are we okay with a system where the district sets policy but can't enforce it? These conversations may be happening in classrooms or planning meetings, but they're not part of official decision-making, at least what we're seeing. So what you might notice in all three of these stories is that districts are responding to parent pressure and political pressure, but they're having a hard time doing foundational work first. They're announcing policies as if they have control, when in fact they really don't. Matteo Dunn, a Fairfax board member, said it pretty clearly. He said, quote, "Embedded AI features, writing assistants, automated tutors, adaptive algorithms are operating on district-issued devices without a clear, comprehensive accounting or formal policy adopted by the board. Our students should not be an ungoverned test case while we try to figure out what is already in their hands." End quote. I think he's right. But now the question is, governed by whom and at what cost? So here's what I'll leave you with. I don't think this is really about whether AI should be in schools. The question is almost irrelevant at this point. The AI is already there. It's embedded in Google searches, Canva, spell check, in most writing tools that students are using. The real question, I think, is how schools actually govern when they can't see what's happening. And the answer, I think, what we're seeing is uncomfortably, through either surveillance or trust. And educators are the ones caught in the middle, trying to figure out which path their district chose and what it means for their classroom. So questions for you here. If your district announced new AI guidance this summer, what was the nature of the conversation with teachers that preceded this announcement? If you're a principal or a teacher leader, which path do you think you're actually on? Are you moving towards more control or towards more trust? And what's the cost? How do you view the trade-offs of either path? I'd love to know your thoughts here. Comments are open, and we'd love to read what you have to say about your experience. One last thing before you go, on a news item we didn't cover in depth, but we'll be keeping an eye on. 100 high school students from all 50 states finished drafting what they're calling an AI Bill of Rights for schools. They've spent nearly 4 years working with this technology, and they've been thinking about some of the exact same governance questions we talked about today. How schools should balance autonomy with oversight, how to protect learning without surveilling students, what actually works in practice. The recommendations are due to come out in the coming weeks, and when they do, we're going to dig in, hear what young people think the answer is when adults can't seem to figure it out. So stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for listening to AI in the Classroom Daily, and we'll be back on Monday with a fresh episode. Have a great weekend.